Hi, this is Joyce from Quilt Beginnings in Dublin, Ohio. I just wanted to welcome you and introduce you to our AccuQuilt cutters. It was life-changing for me, and I'm sure it will be for you too. Their motto is cut time so you can quilt more. So a lot of us maybe have shoulder issues or wrist issues, or maybe you're just not an accurate cutter. This is going to save you time and money by doing that. These are the 3 different cutters that AccuQuilt offers. The first one is the original GO. It is a compression cutting system for all 3, but this is the original size. Then they came out with the GO Big, which is an electric cutter, which I absolutely love, and you will eventually land here if you love it as much as I do. Then they came out with this adorable little GO Me, which is probably not the one you want to start with, but it's a great one to just cut out for classes, or maybe you take it on a retreat, or maybe you have a friend at your house and you both want to use your AccuQuilt cutters. This is another great one. So let me show you how they work. I want to introduce you to how these AccuQuilt cutters work. So the GO Me operates the same way as the original GO, so we're just going to demonstrate on this one. As I said before, this is with compression cutting. It's very easy to use. You can see that it has a very low profile, so it's not going to take up a lot of space in your sewing room. So I'm going to set it like this, and it's very easy to use. All you have to do is open it up just like this. I'm going to turn it around so the handle is on my side, but it works for left-handed people and right-handed because you can crank the handle either way, either to the right or to the left, so it works for everybody. With the GO, you get a value die, which looks like this. So you have 2 sizes of squares and a half square triangle, and you have a mat that goes over it. You'll notice the shapes on here are with 2-tone foam. So the shapes themselves on this particular one is darker than the outer part, which is lighter. So as long as you're covering this shape, then you know that you're going to get the cut that you want. The way that it works is there are blades embedded into the dies themselves. You can't cut yourselves on them, but they're in there. And as I said before, it's with compression cutting. So let me just show you a little bit of the way it works. So here is the label on the die. So they always want you to have your straight of grain towards your label. So the straight of grain, let me grab some fabric here. Here's a piece of fabric. When you cut it off the bolt, you have a selvage edge. So that selvage edge is your straight of grain. When we normally cut, a lot of times we'll cut cross grain, which is from selvage to selvage, and of course we have our bias, which has the most stretch. So in order to get the very perfect cut, you want to make sure that you have the straight of grain facing that label. And the way you can tell is it's a tighter sound, higher pitch, as opposed to the cross grain, which is deep. So that's the way that you can tell, just off of the bolt fabric like that. Put that right there so you can see next. So I have some that are kind of pre-cut. So I have some fabric here with this larger square, for instance. Here's my selvage edge, so it's high and tight. Here's my label. I'm going to just cover that shape. I don't want that little selvage in there, so I went beyond it. But you can see now that you can't see that other tone underneath it, so it's going to cut. You can cut 6 layers at a time. So I'm just gonna, this is called fan folding. So I have 1 layer here. I can go 2, back again, that's 3, fanning back again. I can get 4 cuts out of this one partial strip of fabric. AccuQuilt, using the AccuQuilt cutter is a great way to use your scraps. So after you've cut a quilt out and you have bits and pieces left over, this is a really great way to use up what's left. You spent probably $12.95 a yard for your fabric, so let's use every bit of it. You can cut it up into useful shapes, put it in a bin, let's say of half square triangles or maybe squares, and then when you're ready to do a table runner, a gift, a baby quilt, whatever, you already have those cut. All you have to do is sit down and sew them together. So that was the larger square. I'm putting some fabric over the smaller square. Right here, these are half square triangles, and there's the most popular cuts of all, I believe, with the AccuQuilt cutting system, because you don't have to draw lines or anything like that. You just are going to get what you want, is that half square triangle minus the ears. So you don't even have to worry about those pesky little ears that you usually get, that like your sewing machine likes to eat them up. So they will totally take that off. There's no guesswork when putting them together. So what I'm doing is I have two colors of fabric here. So I have a red and then a lighter color. I'm going to put them on here right sides together, and I'll show you why here in a minute. So I'm covering that up. You can see I have everything covered up. I'm going to take the mat that also comes with it, matches the die itself, and then I'm going to bring it up to the rollers just like this. So once you bring it up to the rollers, and then you start rolling. So it's very easy to do. It's not any effort at all. And again, you can use 6 layers at a time. So here we go. Once you've taken it out, then because it's compression cutting, that mat is pushing against the fabric, which is pushing it into the blades on those shapes to give you that perfect cut. And that's actually why those shapes are at an angle on your die, is so that it's not going to just jar your fabric as it goes through. They've engineered this very, very smartly. So once we've taken it out, we're going to kind of get rid of any static electricity that built up. So instead of just pulling it up, we're just going to twist and slide it off just like that. And I like to put my hand on the shape itself and then just pull away the excess. This gives me great pleasure. It's so perfect. Look at this. So this is what we just cut out very easily, and you cut out, and usually it would take you so much longer to do that. But what I really want to show you are these half square triangle sets. So I can actually just pick this up, go to my sewing machine, and start chain piecing and putting all of these through, because I put them right sides together already. We used compression cutting, which really pushes that fabric together. I don't even need to use pins. Those little pointed corners are off. So instead of having to start at a point, you're starting right here, 1/4 of an inch inside of your fabric on that angle there. So starting at that point, going down to this, and you're going to get a perfect half square triangle, just like that. Now I'd like to introduce you to my favorite cutter of all. This is the AccuQuilt Go Big Electric. So I have a lot of people that have asked me, Joyce, why did you just let me buy the regular one when I should have gone straight to this one, because it is so effortless at all. Obviously, it was very easy for me to roll that other system with the Go, AccuQuilt GO. It's a great cutting system, but you do have to stay with it until you're finished cranking it through. Let me show you this one. Again, it's a little bigger, but the profile isn't that large at all, so it will fit into your sewing room very nicely. The biggest question I get is, how do you open this thing up, because it doesn't open? If you'll look on the bottom, there are little feet on the one side of your machine. So all you have to do is make sure it stands on its feet, just like this. So I'm going to move this over here. And now once it's on its feet, then you just open the door just like that. The next thing you want to do is plug it in. So I have a cord, and then my little plug-in is towards me, so I'm just going to put it in here. And then there's a green button. We're going to turn it on, and you're ready to go. That's all you have to do. With the Go Big Electric, you will get a flying geese die. So it's going to look like this. You're going to have a 1/4 square triangle and 2 half square triangles. So you can make flying geese, and you can make, half square unit sets, or, you can do whatever you want. When you have your die, you don't have to fill the whole thing up with fabric. So let's say I just wanted to use half square triangles, then I would just put my fabric here, put my mat on top, and then cut those out. So let me show you how this one works, because I do love this Go Big Electric. Now, not all the dies will fit in all the machines. So for the original Go, most of the dies will fit in that machine. The Go Baby is a little bit more limited, but it does take a good majority of the dies as well. But the Go Big Electric will take all of the dies, because there's more space in the opening to allow those dies to go through. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to cover up this 1/4 square triangle. Again, I have that straight grain that's facing this label. And then I have my half square triangles where I fan folded. And I'm just going to put that over there. So look how many layers I have. 2, 4, I actually have 5 layers there. So if you were to do that at home, I'm guessing you may not get the perfect cut that you always wanted. The other thing I want to show you is, if I just put that here on my bed of my cutter, I can actually put 2 through at one time with this particular one. And that's a big savings of time also. We're gonna just put this one through. This is the beauty of it. So all I had to do was kind of tap it through. Once I heard the machine pick it up, I'm done with my responsibility with it. I don't have to come rescue it. When it's finished cutting, it can hang there. That's totally fine. I can be getting other dies ready. I can be doing pressing. I can be texting on my phone, whatever you want, but it's done. So that was very simple. Again, we're just going to make sure that static electricity is a little diffused. We're going to twist it off just like this. I like to put my fingers on the shapes themselves. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And then off of my quarter square triangles. Now these aren't typically shapes that people enjoyed cutting out before because you are working with a lot of bias on here. We used to take a square and put a line right down the middle. We'd sew a scant 1/4 inch on either side of that line. Then we'd cut, we'd cut it, and then, we'd have those little ears and we'd have to trim that. And then, if we're attaching it to here, a lot of times your geese would get wonky because of all that bias. But I assure you that you will be so satisfied with your results doing it this way. It comes out perfectly every time, nice and flat. You get your points every time. It is very gratifying. One thing I don't want to forget to tell you, if you're thinking about getting an AccuQuilt cutter, a very economic way to go about it is to there is a set called Ready, Set, Go. So it comes with this original Go cutter, which I actually have this one also, because you can't have too many. But I have this one also, and then it also comes with this 8-inch cube. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but if you get a cutter and you're really serious about using it to cut your fabric, to cut out your patterns, to go to this new way of cutting and making it easier for yourself, you absolutely want to have a cube. So you will get this and a cube which has 8 different shapes in them. So they're the same shapes in each one of the cubes, so we'll talk about that in a minute, but they're just different sizes. So that's a great way to start. You will also get their best-selling die, which is the 2.5-inch strip cutter, and the mat that you need to go with it. Finally, you'll get a pick in case you have any pesky little threads stuck in your die. This is a great way to get them out. And you'll get Eleanor Burns' book, Go Cube, which talks about this and how it works with your system. She's written it in a very easy to understand way on how to cut out using the system, as well as wonderful patterns in here to get you going. So this set is about a $220 savings off the normal price, so very worth your while also. I have to tell you about the 2.5-inch strip cutter, which is their top selling die, and you can probably figure out the reason for that, right? A lot of us cut our binding for our quilts at 2.5 inches. Also, what are jelly rolls? They're 2.5-inch strips. Let's say you have leftover fabric and just a little bit left over. You can be cutting your own jelly rolls with what's left over from your quilts that you've already done. So you would just use this die, and this die is a little bit different. There are blades that only go in one direction. So you don't have any cross blades, so you don't have to worry about that straight of grain when you're using these dies, these strip dies. If you'll look at this, and it might look a little confusing, but it's pretty awesome. Our blades are embedded right here. This is the 2.5-inch strip. Up here, there's a screen printed line. We're going to put the fold of our fabric up here, and I'll show you that in a minute. But then you'll see all these other lines on here as well. So they're not blades there, so don't worry about it. They're just placement lines. So if you wanted to get a 60-degree cut, a 45, a 30, or even a 90-degree cut, all you have to do is align your fabric once you've cut your strips against them, and you'll get amazing results. So we're going to take this strip cutter. When your fabric comes off the bolt, here is about 2/3 of a yard, about 24 inches. So here is my selvage edge, and then here is my fold. So I can take this, and I'm going to put it right at the top where that screen printed line is at the top of my die. I'm going to put the fold there. That first blade is right here, and I'm going to put my fabric just beyond that blade. So as long as it's just beyond that, we're going to be great. So I have my fold at the top. I'm making sure that that goes beyond the first blade. Now because it's folded, that's already 2 layers. Then I'm going to fold it over and go just beyond the next blade, that outer blade right here. So I'm still lined up at the top. I'm on either edge of the blade. Once I folded that over, this is called fan folding. Now I have 4 layers, and finally my 6 layers are just like this, okay? So I'm gonna put it just like that. I'm beyond my blades on both sides. I'm going to put my mat on top, making sure we're good there, okay. I'm gonna put my mat on top. Okay, so if I were using one of the other systems, you know, of course you're going to crank it until you get to the end, but on my Go, can you hear it take it? I'm done. So I can go do whatever else I want to do while it's cutting. Have you ever cut out your strips with just your rotary cutter and your ruler, and maybe it slipped, maybe you're midway and your ruler slipped and now you don't have a true 2.5 inches, or maybe you've cut it and you've noticed when you've opened it up there's a bow in the fold. How does that happen? Well, it doesn't happen with the AccuQuilt cutter. Let's see what they look like. So I'm going to kind of diffuse that static electricity, and I'm just going to slide it off like that. Whoopsie. These outer edges are just the you know, outside of the 2.5 inches. Okay, so here we go. We have 3, 6, 9. If you have an occasional, I'm glad this happened. I want you to see it. If you have an occasional string that's caught there on your die, just take little scissors to cut it. That is normal. So don't think you've got a faulty die. That's normal. You might get an occasional string that's caught. But let me show you. So we just cut out 9 strips from here. This is enough. That didn't take very long, did it? That's enough to do a queen size quilt. You're binding for a queen size quilt. Isn't that fabulous? And I want to show you these beautiful strips. There's no bow in them. Look how straight that is. So super easy, super fast. That's why it's the #1 die in the AccuQuilt system. All right, now that you've decided which fabulous cutter you've decided on, then let's talk about what you need next. Because if you just get a cutter and you get the die that came with it, then that's all you're going to be able to cut, right? So for instance, let's say you got the Go Big Electric, you got the Flying Geese die, then you can cut all the half square triangles and quarter square triangles you want, but that's it. So that's not realistic as far as cutting out everything you want in your quilting, right? So what you really need to get is you need to invest in a cube. So their cubes have 8 different dies in them. So there are 2 sizes of squares, there are 2 sizes of half square triangles, there's a rectangle, a parallelogram, and quarter square triangles, and then a square on point. So you get all those shapes in each of the cubes. The cubes come in different sizes. So there is a 6-inch cube, an 8-inch cube, a 9, a 10, a 12, and then there is a new size coming out soon. So all you have to decide is what size finished block do I want to work with the most. So I would say the 8-inch and the 9-inch are probably the most popular. The 12-inch cube and the 10-inch cube, those are large size blocks. And then the 6-inch cube does beautiful. It just does beautiful squares, beautiful quilts with those because they're so pristine looking. You'll love all of them, and eventually you might want to get them all, but let's look at how they are. So they're packaged beautifully. So we just take this off, you'll see that it's in this wonderful container. So these shapes are going to be the same in each of the cubes. So for instance, the #1 is a square, so it's going to be the same in each of the cubes. So it'll just be different sizes. All of these in here, when they're finished putting together, they'll end up for the 8-inch block in an 8-inch finished block. So I'm going to pull this out so you can see. We're going to open this up. Isn't this a great packaging? So this is going to be dies #1 through 4. They each have their little home, and they each actually have a little pattern that goes in with them. So you can make a whole quilt out of, you know, just whatever pattern goes in with each of them. So dies 1 through 4, when you're finished with them, you just pop them back in here, put them away. Here is the next set. These are dies 5 through 8. So, you know, you won't lose them, and they're identified what goes in each one. So it's a great way for storage, but it's the most economical way to get a good start on your quilting cutting. Finally, in your box, you will have a mat, and you'll have a cutting mat that goes with this, and then also a disc just to give you information about AccuQuilt, and a little pattern book so you can take off right from there. But wait, there's more. There's so much more. So with those 8 different shapes, which are the most typical probably for doing your quilts. You can do so many things. I'm going to put this over to the side so you can see. So the quilt behind me, this is what you can do with just one cube. So I made this quilt using the 9-inch cube, which is 9-inch finished blocks. There are 72 different free patterns on the AccuQuilt website. They have the directions with it too, but all of these blocks are actually all together in this quilt behind me. And I'll tell you, the most gratifying thing I've seen in our club that we have is when someone is new to AccuQuilt, they put their first block together, and so they've cut it out and they're sewing it together, and they're not really paying attention to what's happening on front. They're just sewing it together. But when they turn their finished block over, they are so thrilled to see that all their points are there and it is the right size and it's nice and flat. So very gratifying, but you can do all of these. This is just a start. You can do so much more, but this is what you can do with one cube. Now that you're familiar with the AccuQuilt GO cube, I just wanted to introduce you also to their companion sets. So they have 2 companion sets. One is companion corners, which has 4 more dies with shapes that are very typical for quilts also. So like the 2 pieces to the snowball block, and also a chisel block and a signature block, as well as their companion angles. This one also has 4 dies that have like the triangle in a square, the kite block with its edges, and then you have your trapezoid. So these shapes are not easy to cut out. They're not fun to cut out with a ruler, and if you're having to do a lot of them, this is totally the way to go. You can cut it out so easily, perfectly, quickly. Then for each of those companion sets, there's 72 more blocks you can add to the original 72. So really, it's endless what you can do. Also, you can use patterns that you just get that you love, and which is like this one that we have right here. This was Heritage Square, and we just used our AccuQuilt dies to figure out what the pattern needed, and then we just made our quilt that way. There's all kinds of other things that AccuQuilt offers. So they have this new one. It's a cute little dinosaur trio. But if you have an embroidery machine, you love embroidery, so like that would be kind of tricky to trim out, right? So you can actually cut it out with your AccuQuilt cutter with like a steam seam, for instance, on the back, put it inside the placement lines. The best part is AccuQuilt, when you buy these dies, you can get your free download of the embroidery designs to go around the outer edges. So satin stitch, blanket stitch, fancy stitch, you have your choice, but super simple to use. Also, there are circles, which are very hard to cut out by hand to get a perfect circle. They're just endless, right, quilts? So you can do whatever you want. It's a whole new world with AccuQuilt GO cutters. Now that you have your AccuQuilt system and your dies, the best way to hone your skills and to learn how to use it the best is repetition's the best teacher, right? So we've always had a club, but right now we're doing Beyond the Cube. So it's a really good sized quilt. It's 96 by 96. We're using the 8-inch cube. And if you do something like this, you're going to be using your AccuQuilt cutter, so cutting and sewing, and that's going to make you use your AccuQuilt cutter the most and really learn how to use it. So here's an example of where we're started. You can join us at any time. All the information's ready for you. Just give us a call.